Welcome everyone to another episode of Around the Block Talk. Here we have with us Charlotte Shen. He is the founder at TheTechNative and a tech consultant. So very happy to have you here today with us, Charlotte.
Thank you, Pratik, for having me. Hi, everyone. Just to dive a little bit more into my introduction, like Pratik said, I'm the founder of TheTechNative, and what TheTechNative is a community and online course platform focused on helping people find an edge with a focus on core personal branding, soft skills, and superior industry consulting knowledge. And professionally, I'm part of the strategy and consulting arm at Accenture, having 3.5 years of experience doing strategy and transformation, specifically in new frontier tech in up to 9 different industries. Currently, I'm focused as a Metaverse strategist, being one of the few Singapore-based consultants working on full-fledged Metaverse strategies for some high-growth companies in Southeast Asia, as well as helping Accenture shape end-to-end Metaverse deals for fast-growth clients in growth markets, as well as in other parts of the world.
Indeed, that's great to know, Charlotte. Also, before we move ahead, we would like to know how did you get into this industry and what has your journey?
Thanks for asking. So I think while I was in university, I've always been quite amazed by the effects of transformation that we're seeing. And at that time, I was thrown into a lot of activities in the tech space. There were a lot of conferences and technology events that were happening. And I threw myself in there, and took the opportunity to make new connections, as well as take the opportunity to learn new tech trends. And that really spurred a lot of my motivation to find ways on how to solve problems for large organizations. So after university, I decided that the best way to understand what large organizations are struggling with, and to understand how technology is impacting the world, I decided to join the consulting practice. And so far, 3.5 to 4 years in, it's still a daily learning experience, constantly in different industry environments, different cultures, constantly learning about new things and helping large organizations be able to gain value through large-scale new frontier tech transformations.
Sure, that's great to know. Starting off our conversation today, we would like to know your views on what is the place for Metaverse and how is it connected?
Yeah, for sure. So there's been a lot of talk about the Metaverse, and a lot of people have varying levels of knowledge about the Metaverse. Some people, unknowingly incorrectly correlate the Metaverse and the blockchain and crypto. And so today in this talk, I really want to find an easy way to help demystify exactly what Web3 is, what the Metaverse is, what their correlation is, and finally why it matters, because there is an emergence of a blue ocean. And that's where a lot of organizations are racing to go into in order to get a slice of the pie. So I'll start off first by explaining what Web3 is. And there are just three things that you should keep in mind when people talk about Web3. When you talk about Web3, the first that comes to mind is decentralization. And perhaps that's a term that you've been hearing about, but don't really know what quite it is. When we talk about decentralization, it just simply means that no single entity controls the whole of your data, as well as its functionality that's related to the data. An example, for a layman example, would just be, for example, if you're using Facebook, all of the data that's being exchanged on the platform is being controlled by a single entity, which is Facebook itself. And hence you have pretty much limited ownership rights of your data, as well as the functionality of the data, by being on the Facebook platform. And so we've kind of been moving away from where we are right now, which is a lot of centralization, into a state of decentralization. And so as long as someone has access to the internet service provider, you can actually start assessing a decentralized space. And an example of a decentralized space is the metaverse, in which later I'll explain a little bit more exactly about what the metaverse truly is. And the second thing about decentralization is that as long as you have access to computing equipment, relevant computing equipment, you're able to provide services in a decentralized environment, and hence you're able to provide services in the metaverse. The second thing about Web3 is actually the blockchain, and blockchain has been the buzzword, since quite a number of years ago. And the fact is that a lot of industries are still trying to wrap their heads around transformation with blockchain. And think about blockchain not as a piece of alien technology that's super hard to understand, because all you're looking, when you look at it on the internet, it talks about distributed ledger technologies that strives to, try to enhance the accuracy of data, as well as reduce the amount of manual transactions that are required to verify something in the form of a data. Simply, you could think of blockchain as a form of guiding principle that simplifies how we securely share data, move value, and better manage the identity of people, groups, and things in the digital world. Now, with blockchain, all ecosystem partners view and access only one source of truth, eliminating the time and cost in manual checks and balances to verify the implications borne by the parties of the data. Now, what it means for organizations is a lot of opportunities to unlock value, unrealized value through automation, as well as with the fact that by merging together multi-party system blockchains, which includes other existing technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, which are really all technologies that just help to interpret data more efficiently in today's world, where it's just flooding with lots of data. By establishing multi-party system blockchains, organizations can then establish stronger and fully automated value chains that are facilitated by smart contracts and digital assets. I'll dive into a couple of use cases later on about the blockchain, as well as full-fledged metaverses that will give you an insight about what I'm talking about right now. And lastly, the last thing about Web3 is the token economy. And what you've been hearing is the form cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency is just one form of a token economy. When you look at the token economy, there are perhaps up to 8 different types of tokens that exist. And tokens just mean a representation of the value of physical goods or assets, or digital goods and assets and services, how much it truly is valued. And with all of that, it forms Web3, which is a decentralized web. And now let's talk about the metaverse, and what exactly the metaverse is. So as we all know, what we're using right now is the World Wide Web, right? So the metaverse, simply think of it as an evolution of the World Wide Web. And actually the metaverse is not something that's new, or I would say largely alien and future. But the ironic thing about the metaverse is that it already has been existing many years back. It simply now has come to light with the emergence of large companies like Meta that's rebranded themselves, and this term metaverse is just floating around, becoming more of a layman term, but still there's a lot of myths surrounding it. The metaverse is just accumulation of new and old technologies that are coming together in order to form a unified experience. So for example, current day, we actually use the World Wide Web. And what we're doing is we're browsing. So when we get on google.com, we're just browsing websites after websites through web pages to view static and interactional content. Now, the difference about the metaverse is that we're entering an internet of immersive experiences through widgets, or what we call portals, within web pages. The metaverse boasts of synchronous and asynchronous environments, different levels of immersiveness, so that could be fully virtual. It could be also mixed, virtual as well as physical, or somewhat physical aspect, depending on the metaverse devices used. And it really promotes a lot of real-time communications which is currently not too existent within where we are of our state of the internet. So we're not restricted to any text, video, or audio and avatar gestures form in the metaverse. So now that I've explained about the blockchain and the metaverse, the correlation comes at the intersection of the blockchain and metaverse, which gives rise a internet of places. And in the intersection at the internet of places, what you're seeing is the best of technology and experience coming together in order to give rise to a new blue ocean for many organizations, regardless of the industries that they're in. And when I talk about blue ocean, to the consumer. So from for an organization to consumer perspective, what organizations are seeing is that firstly, they are seeing that there is access to newer customer segments given the metaverse increases participation. So anyone in the world with the access to an internet service provider could access the metaverse. And if you want to participate in it, to trade services in it, all you need is relevant computing equipment, right? The second is that organizations are realizing that the metaverse is a channel to form deepening relationships and trust with the consumers. And so how it does is that through compelling storytelling, somewhat storytelling that you might be familiar with in games, now it's being translated into immersive environments in the metaverses, where through compelling stories, users are actually unknowingly being connected to many touch points of the company's brand. And last but not least, what it means to organizations is that they're able to offer complementary goods and services, as well as look at the metaverse as an upselling opportunity, because now they're able to identify newer micro segments of consumers, as well as be able to offer a greater range of goods and services, which they've never been able to before. So that includes things like on the exclusivity scale, which talks about things like exclusive experiences and tokenized assets, which we'll talk more about that later. So hopefully, Pratik, with the explanation of what I've just shared about Web3, the metaverse, and the intersection of it, I hope that it gives a layman understanding of what exactly the evolution has been, and the fact that I want to stress is that we've already been in some part of the touch points of the metaverse already through extended reality. And now we're just going full force into the metaverse. We're seeing more players rise in the Web3 segment, because the Web3, think of it as a engine to run the metaverse. And the truth is that there is no true metaverse that exists current day. A lot of the things that you're hearing about Web3 in the metaverse comes in the form of crypto powered platforms, decentralized finance platforms, play to earn games, and a lot of these places that exist are all owned by centralized organizations. So technically, we haven't even moved into decentralization yet. And later in my conclusion of the talk, I will give more of a shocking revelation, because we're talking about Web3, but as I told you, Web3 is about decentralization. But the fact is that Web3 is actually not fundamentally decentralized.
Indeed. So thank you for that introduction to Web3 and Metaverse. So some of the challenges that it is trying to solve today that we see, and also the limited experience that you get from a website. Now moving on to our next question. So how would you did touch upon this particular point, but what are the opportunities for new companies and real estate conglomerates and such to kind of adopt these technologies, and what they can do with this?
For sure, I would love to share, given that right now I'm working with a couple of high growth Asia companies, especially those in real estate, who are racing to build full-fledged metaverses. And just to give you some context, the current closest contender of what it means to be a metaverse is actually this platform called Decentraland. Now, Decentraland is considered a metaverse because there is no central entity that owns it, and anyone can participate and contribute to it because it runs as a DAO, DAO, which is short form for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And if you can correlate back with my initial explanation about decentralization, that would kind of join the dots a bit. Decentraland is a 3D world that mimics real world colonization experiences. And what they do is they enforce artificial land security through distributed ledger technologies and cryptocurrency. So as a participant in Decentraland, what you just need is a digital wallet in order to participate in that world, in order to buy, own, and develop virtual land tokens. And so summing it all up, it gives you perhaps the closest example of what the metaverse is. It encapsulates the essence of decentralization. It runs as a full economy, as some financial payments that are being run by Web3 technologies, which includes distribution ledger technologies and cryptocurrency. And last but not least, in terms of what it's missing actually to become a full-fledged metaverses, is the fact that it is limited in terms of immersive and inclusive 3D experiences. So Decentraland is almost like just a revenue generator for a couple of organizations. They're buying parcels of land in order to showcase their goods and services on there, which really correlates back to the point where I said a lot of people are recognizing the metaverse as a new distribution channel. But the fact is that a lot of conglomerates, especially real estate conglomerates lately, are racing to build more inclusive and full-fledged metaverses. And when I say full-fledged metaverses, it simply means scalable 3D immersive experiences. So when I first made the point about metaverses being a new way of the World Wide Web, you're moving from immersive places one after another through widgets or portals in a website. And so what it is that a metaverse should be portals to newer worlds, newer immersive environments, and with a scalable storytelling that is compelling enough to the consumer to keep them continuously visiting the platform in order for them to constantly participate in the metaverse. And what it is that one example that I could give is the DAMEC Properties Group. You could look it up, right? They're one of the region's largest property developers, and they're part of a multi-billion-dollar business conglomerate of UAE, and they're investing over $100 million for a metaverse lab that would develop global-wide services, which includes virtual homes to even selling digital jewelry. They recognize that the metaverse is a new realm and consumer channel to experience new ways to connect better with the customer and to predict customers' more sophisticated preferences better. And another example is also in the real estate world. It's not just real estate developers, but even real estate designers and architects. One example is Zaha Hadid Architects. Zaha Hadid has revealed intentions of designing a virtual city made up of buildings and infrastructure in the firm's signature architecture style. Once complete, they're saying that users around the world can join the metaverse to engage in shopping, collaboration through the metaverse, even enter the metaverse to join co-working spaces and view NFT galleries. Now, the focal point of this virtual city is self-governance, which correlates back to the characteristic of decentralization. Now, what's interesting is that Zaha Hadid's future metaverse world is inspired actually from a real-life micronation called the Free Republic of Liberland. And it actually exists. If you look up on the map, it actually exists between Serbia and Croatia. And what it is that this Free Republic of Liberland actually runs on a currency, which is the cryptocurrency, and it's called the Liberland Merit. And what is interesting is that in this example that I've just given, you can see that conglomerates are striving to build metaverses to allow innovators and non-conformists to find comfort, to collaborate and ideate in places where they're not being controlled, censored, nor ruled and restricted by any single government, entity, or corporation. Now, a final example of a real estate venture and viability in the metaverse is this company called Lunique, Lunique. It is another real estate project developer, and they've came up with this project called Virium. And proposed by this group, what Virium will do is become potentially the world's first mixed reality metaverse project. Mixed reality just means there is a mix between physical and virtual objects and experiences. And what they'll do is they'll steadily launch the ultimate metaverse that seeks to use real estate and virtual worlds to redefine the utility of cryptocurrency and NFTs in several phases. From the first phase of launching digital twins, which are just simply launching digital replicas of the existing physical assets, to worlds that build newly imagined digital worlds. So imagine completely fantastical nature types of contents that you've never seen before, full-fledged immersive and creative worlds. Now, these worlds seek to bridge together the physical and digital, in which the new term for this type of description is actually called phygital, which is the mix between physical and digital. And hence, with this new concept of phygital and phygital worlds, organizations hope to provide seamless experiences between physical and virtual. So it doesn't seem so I guess Ready Player One type of world anymore, where you're just disappearing into the virtual world with completely no correlation to your physical world. And so summing it all up, there's definitely a uproar for companies to enter the metaverse, to build the metaverse. But how can we justify consumers to spend money in the metaverse? So if we look back to one of the most popular games during the pandemic, which was Animal Crossing. Now, the fact is a lot of people kept playing Animal Crossing during that period of time is because they felt the ability to connect with communities, the feeling of responsibility and urge to help shape communities, cultures, and values. And so conglomerates who have the resources in order to launch full-fledged metaverses must recognize their salient positions to influence the masses, to use their global reach for good by creating a metaverse for good, a metaverse that inspires people to have a positive impact. Now, with this approach, organizations can go a long way to deepen relationships and trust with users all around the world. And use this new piece of technology in a good way in order to help gather concerted efforts to do good.
Indeed. So you walked us through the various implementations and the various possibilities we have with this new technology. So one question that I would like to ask you over here would be the change. It kind of changes the social paradigm, how we connect with people, how we interact with people. So with the advent of social media, we saw our social connections changed essentially for the better or worse. That's another debate, but there has been an evolving change. So how will this metaverse, how will this social paradigm change, and what are the ethical and what are the moral considerations while building this technology to ensure that
Definitely, that's a great question. So right now, in terms of how I guess our social interactions are starting to change, I wouldn't say there is a large amount of change. The fact, firstly, is that for metaverse to be accessible for common people, layman people like you and I, and the people in the audience today, is that firstly, the metaverse needs to be accessible enough. It needs to be as accessible as picking up your phone right now and accessing the metaverse. And the truth is that there are there isn't a proper evolution of metaverse devices yet that are convenient enough, accessible enough, affordable enough for people to pick up and enter the metaverse. So the metaverse needs to start from what we already have, which is accessing maybe a 3D or immersive world through a flat screen or through your traditional web browser. And from there, as companies are also slowly trying to wrap their hands around this nascent technology, companies will then move from digital twins, which is a very, I guess, the least representation of what the metaverse is. They'll start from there and slowly move into what I call the phygital, which is the mix of digital and physical experiences, and also then finally layer completely immersive and fantastical type of worlds that will perhaps need more types of immersive devices, like more intuitive VR gears. And within the middle of the continuum, you probably need mixed reality gears, which, right now we have the HoloLens. And so our interactions will, I would say, largely be almost the same as how we've been interacting with each other right now. It's just that in the metaverse, which is characterized by decentralization, it just gives you more freedom to meet people around the world, to talk to people, to collaborate and create with people. And it also unlocks the doors to, I would say, improper usage of this freedom, of this decentralization. Because right now, a lot of people think that they go into metaverses in order to escape from realities and crises of a modern world. If you watch, even anime, I think there are a couple of animes that have been produced in the past that really gives an insight into how our metaverses will be. But the storyline always goes from a perspective of, people escaping, becoming, who they truly want to be in the metaverse. That's just one essence of it, but it really encourages people to go onto such platforms to do nefarious things. And the fact is that you go onto the metaverse simply not to escape from our current day crisis. If you look at cryptocurrency, our virtual cryptocurrency is completely virtual, but the fact that it is flagging due to macroeconomic conditions, because the fact is that virtual assets and virtual places will reflect events and crises of our real world. So you can't hide from what we're experiencing in the real world. I think the encouragement is to go into such platforms in order to try to do good, and think of it as a new way in order to collaborate with like-minded people around the world much better. And so for metaverses to become more moral, there are current number of platform-based technologies that are trying to push out integrations in order to make metaverses more, sociable and more comfortable for people. An example is Kara Technologies. They're an AI company that uses hyper-realistic sign language avatars to deliver content for all hard of hearing consumers.
Indeed. So as you mentioned, metaverse would enable us to do things that we cannot possibly do in our physical reality. And so it enhances our ability in a number of ways. So just like another consideration, the other aspect of it is that it takes us away from the actual reality, and probably spending too much time in a virtual environment takes you away from what's happening around you. So yeah, so we are yet to see how things are pan out, but definitely a power to look forward to. So now coming to the topic of NFTs, and so we've seen a very recent boom in buzzword today. So what are your views on NFTs? What can these be used for?
Yes, so NFT is definitely the buzzword. Everyone's going crazy about NFTs. Today, I guess before I deep dive into the user-oriented NFTs as well as enterprise oriented NFTs, firstly, let's just dive back into the fundamentals of what a token is. So a token is just a representation of value, rights, and obligations of a physical or virtual asset. And so what happened is that we have moved from paper-based to electronic and now to tokenized state of representing value. And there are just two different things you have to know about tokens. One is fungible, one is non-fungible. So what fungible means is that it just can be readily exchanged for another of like kind. So for example, if you hold gold, you could exchange gold for maybe a large sum of money, right? If you hold crypto, you could exchange crypto for a sum of USD. Those are fungible tokens. Now, non-fungible is what we're looking at, which is NFTs. NFT is just one example of non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens just means that a token is unique and a substitute does not exist at all. So an example of a physical non-fungible token is a Mona Lisa painting because there's only one in the entire world. The second, in terms of digital, is the digital collectible. So for example, if I own, a Bored Apes NFT, this one of its kind, there's no other design like it. It only belongs to me. So NFTs are just one type of tokens in the blockchain system. And just to give you a high-level summary of what other tokens exist in the token economy, you have things like utility tokens, which confers rights, you have security tokens, you have asset-backed tokens, you have stable coins, etc., etc., etc. Now, an NFT today, which is the topic of our discussion, is that it's unique and it defines the utility. The owner of an NFT is being recorded in the distributed ledger. And so all of the history is being recorded on ledger technology. And when I talk about ledger technology, if you read up more about blockchain, it just simply means that being on the ledger, it just means that it's immutable. And everyone views one source of truth. Now, NFTs are springing up in almost every industry. You could look across the board, from FMCG to even real estate to even the music industry. Everyone is just trying to get their hands on, being part of the NFT topic. And in summary, why all these are happening is because industries are realizing that, in short, NFTs can drive business value, full stop. It changes the way we work, we interact, we discover, how we try experiences, how we buy experiences, and how we express ourselves. So one example of user-oriented NFTs would be in the music or publishing music market. So historically, artists have always been bound to publishing houses. Publishing houses dictate the fraction of revenues that they earn. The artists also, have quite a number of restrictions in how they can engage with their listeners. And now with the rise of NFT, is actually freeing all these traditional artists from the cages of traditional publishing houses. It's actually giving them more rights over their revenue, the rights to the music, the rights to how they should interact with their consumers. And so what we're seeing is that you're seeing a whole new rise of indie music on OpenSea. You have many very talented indie musicians that are coming to light, people actually enjoying their music, people actually wanting to buy their music through the form of NFTs. And it also allows all these artists to build deeper relationships with their consumers. Now, the next type of user-oriented NFTs is also in the jewelry market. So just a couple of weeks ago, I heard a lady who is the founder of Jivos, which is an NFT jewelry wearables. And I didn't even notice, but she was actually wearing a pair of NFT earrings on the call. And I thought they were real earrings because the way that, it's being represented on screen was just so real. It was dangling according to her head movements. And if she didn't tell us, I honestly wouldn't have knew that it was an NFT wearable. And that struck me because that gave me more of a closer example of what NFTs could mean to normal people like you and I. I think there still needs to be a growing awareness about digital ownership and growing importance of digital ownership. Till then, I think there's still a lot of work that's needed in order to get people into the NFT space, apart from the micro market of consumers right now, who are consumers who value exclusivity and premium offerings. And last but not least, on the enterprise angle, what enterprises are doing with NFTs is in the area of supply chain. Now, supply chain and blockchain is already doing a good job in tracing data. But when you throw in the concept of NFTs, you're actually adding the ability to tag individual products with unique identifiers. So this is great when you talk about organizations with huge supply chains. It's great for managing complex returns process. That's one super complicated thing that houses face. The process of following back an item from the consumer to the warehouse is a very mind-boggling process. And then subsequently, throwing an NFT into the blockchain and supply chain space, you'll be able to determine quickly if an item that's being returned from a consumer should then be recycled or thrown away. So you end up making more productive decisions and having the end-to-end transparency oversight of how your supply chain operates is what is so eye-catching for organizations who are transforming, who are looking to transform their supply chains using all these new technologies.
Indeed, and thank you for throwing light on that aspect of NFTs. So definitely NFTs could become a new medium for brands to interact with customers, for artists to interact with their audience, and also shape the virtual asset industry. And so now coming on to your experiences with virtual. How have they been?
Yeah, thank you, Pratik, for the question. So for myself, I've dabbled in the extended reality space before the term metaverse subsequently came about. I've used multiple mixed reality glasses before in showcases as well as virtual glasses. And so for myself, I was just interested in seeing how we slowly evolve and progress into full-fledged metaverses. So I lately have been using the Meta Oculus Quest 2, which is simply a virtual reality device that grants you entry into, I guess, contenders of what the metaverse will become one day. And Meta is slowly building, I guess, these immersive places so that when they're ready to launch, they're able to coalesce and enable a full-fledged metaverse. So examples would be what you're seeing in terms of Meta Horizon workrooms as well as Meta Horizon. They are just one or two examples of, I guess, closest contenders to the metaverse. And so I've been using the Oculus Quest to explore what kind of apps are available. I'm quite impressed by the immersiveness of certain apps, such as Trip, which is a VR meditation application. So I've never imagined that I could have an elevated meditation experience virtually, but with the Oculus Quest 2, you really can. And as well as I've been trying to play games on the Oculus as well. So previously, if just usually played web browser games, either through just the computer or the PS5. And now with the metaverse, with the Oculus, it's quite interesting to see how the gameplay changes using a virtual reality headset. And last but not least, I'm also quite an extrovert. I always love to go to events, meet new people. So with the Oculus Quest 2, I've been joining Outspace VR, which is a community platform where you could organize community events and just get together with people. And so I've been using that platform to tune into a couple of events as well as make some friends that sit many miles away. And it's just interesting to hear what they're doing. So one of them that I befriended is actually building decentralized servers, which is super interesting. But before I could send her friend connection, sadly I was disconnected because my device went out of battery. So in just a conclusion, in terms of devices perspective, we still have a long way to go in terms of evolution of a proper metaverse device that is light enough, that's conducive enough, affordable enough, accessible enough for anyone and everyone in the world to buy. We're just not at that point yet. So you probably from a consumer angle see a lot of a couple of different versions of VR devices that will continue to rise in the market before we get to a state maybe in the next 3 to 4 years for a proper device.
Indeed. And so with that, Charlotte, thank you very much for appearing on the show. And so lastly, probably we can take a question from the audience if someone would have for the speaker. I think we can conclude the talk for today. And thank you very much for appearing on the show.
Pratik, if you don't mind, perhaps I could just conclude with a few pointers.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So just in conclusion is that when we, in summary, we still have a long way to go to get to the metaverse. And that's why I titled the topic of today's discussion as the metaverse will come soon. For full-fledged metaverse to fully develop, it takes about another 4 to 5 years for one to emerge. And the fact is that some level of technical skill and understanding is required to participate in the metaverse. So we are seeing a lack of talent, especially in the area of smart contracts, little knowledge about cryptocurrency. And the fact is that devices that are able to let you participate and access the metaverse are still evolving. The next thing that I like to highlight is the fact, we talk about NFTs, about the potential of metaverse and NFTs for companies to maybe earn more money. But there's another way to see it. Really, I think organizations have to use their positions in order to recognize that with the rise of the metaverse and with components of the metaverse like NFTs, they could really help make the world a better place. So you could use NFTs and the metaverse in order to perhaps raise charitable funds. So an example would be a project called Rogue Bee Design Club. And what they're doing is selling NFTs, which are images of bees, bumblebees, in order to raise the importance of bumblebees and the threats they face with our growing climate crisis. And all of the profits that goes to the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, which overall enhances awareness of bumblebee ecology. So overall, if you use it properly, it's a great way to raise charity funds, make the world a better place. And lastly, my concluding point is that lo and behold, we're not there yet at all for the metaverse. Even when we talk about Web3, ironically, Web3 is not truly Web3. Bitcoin, Ethereum are all stepping stones on the way to the decentralized internet, as known as the Web3. Because they're all being built on centralized domains and storages right now. And centralized domains and storages means that it's being owned by a central authority. And so we're not there yet at all, but there is hope for the metaverse to come. Recently, Point Network launched. It is the world's first decentralized network. And they've released an alpha, which strives to realize the decentralized internet. So I think, just keep looking out and just, read up on factual news. And I think with all of the concerted movements in the market, as well as strategic foresights and force made by organizations, we will definitely reach to the state of decentralized internet.
Indeed. So with that, thank you very much, Charlotte, for your thoughts and views on Metaverse and for appearing on the talk. It was indeed interesting.
Thank you. Thank you, Pratik.